On today's Maker Mashup, we are giving Octoprint a makeover. So today we're going to be working on giving Octoprint a makeover. Now, what do I mean by a makeover? Everybody that has seen Octoprint has seen this white interface, and they look at it, and if you're like me, I like a dark theme. I like the ability to change in an IDE a dark theme. And what I'm going to do today is show you how to do this in Octoprint. But I'm going to take it a step further than just loading in a dark theme. I'm going to show you how you can customize Octoprint to do what you want to do and lay it out the way that you want to lay it out. Now, in order for you to learn how to do this, you're going to have to understand a little bit about how HTML works, a little bit about CSS. I'm going to try to tackle this at a really high level. Not everybody watching these videos knows how to write HTML or CSS code, but there's a lot of really good resources out there on the internet, and I've put some links in the description on a couple of places where you can get a little bit more information. But you really shouldn't need it for most of the Octoprint. Now, if you run into any trouble or you have questions on this, you can always check out our Discord. It's an online makerspace. There's other makers working on this project and other projects, and you can ask questions in the chat. And if I'm not available, other people are available. There's some real rock stars out there working on cool projects, and they will be glad to answer your questions. So please feel free to check out the link in the description on Discord. You'll be able to go in there and get answers to most of your questions. And while we're at it, now's probably a great time for you to click that subscribe button and click that bell for instant notifications when I release new videos. Then you won't miss any of the videos like this one that show you how to make Octoprint look much better and give it a makeover. Well, with that, I think we've got a lot of work to do, so let's get to work. All right, so we have here our default view for Octoprint, and it is white and bright. And this works okay if you want to keep the default view or you don't want to customize it. But I'm going to go ahead and show you here how we can get a couple of different themes right off the bat with very little work. So what we're going to do here is go up to our wrench icon in Octoprint, and we're going to go down here to the plugin manager. And then what you're going to do is click Get More here. And the plugin we're going to look for is Themify. So if you just type the word theme, you'll see Themify and beautiful themes for Octoprint. So when you click the install, it's going to go ahead here and install everything. And then we're going to have to restart Octoprint when we're all done here. So we'll speed along to that. So you can see here the default theme is loaded, and Discorded, which is the name of this theme, already looks 100% better in my opinion just by installing that plugin. So if you go to the little wrench icon here and we go to Themify, you'll see that you have the ability to use some of their pre-selected themes, the cyborg one, there's a nighttime, but we're gonna just start with the base Discorded theme. So when we start doing this, it's good that you start with whichever theme that you like the best as your base theme. Okay, so if you're still with us at this point, you've got Octoprint up and running, it's got the theme manager in there, and you've got the dark theme installed. Now, you may choose to use a different theme. The next part that I'm going to show you here will apply to dark themes or any theme. You don't even have to use a different theme. If you like the white, you can stick with that and still make these adjustments here that I'm going to talk about next. Okay, so you can see here I've got my Octoprint up, and it is drastically different than the Octoprint that we have with just the default theme. You can see here that I've got a wider screen, the buttons are different colors here, and I've got a layout that's slightly different down here, including some custom buttons. So I've been able to accomplish this all through the Themify plugin, so you won't need to edit CSS or edit HTML. All that we'll have to do is be able to identify a couple of things within HTML, one of them being the ID and the other being the class. Those are the things that we're going to be looking for in the HTML on this web page and then modifying with the Themify plugin. So I've got a couple of tabs open here, and I've got two of my Octoprint instance, and then I've got a couple here of the one that we are going to be modifying. So before we get started, on one of the tabs on mine, I'm going to open up the inspector. Now you'll need to do this on your Octoprint instance, and that way what you'll be able to do is look through here and see different areas of the HTML to identify those IDs and classes that we want to modify. So with this tab, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my Themify settings, just so that way we can look in some of the things that I've done and apply it to how we'll modify this new instance that we created for this video. So in Themify, you'll see here that I have enable customization. You're going to want to enable that too. That's going to allow us to customize everything within Octoprint. Then we're going to go down here to the advanced options. Now when you open this up, you're going to see something that looks like this, where everything is disabled, and when you click enable customization, it will enable it. Now this is the starting point for Themify, and what we're going to do is talk about some of the changes that I've made within mine and how to apply them to yours. So the first thing we're going to do here, as you can see, is the window that I have for my webcam view is considerably larger than this webcam view. Now this is super handy, as I saw this webcam view and I said to myself, it's really not a great view of the printer while it's printing, and I wanted to make that larger. So that's how I got started doing all of this. So let's take a look at what I've done here in my settings. Now you can see here that there is a span 8 and a dot container. The ones that start with a dot are references to classes. And what a class is in CSS is basically a way that you can group similar styles together. Now the ones that start with the pound sign, these are IDs. And what IDs are unique elements within the HTML. So as an example, you could say something like the webcam image has an ID, but the container that has the webcams and the connection information over to the left is in a container. So let's go take a look at the span and the container in our new Octoprint instance. So I've got here Octoprint. I'm going to right click and open the inspector. And now this is where we can start navigating. You can use this little arrow as a search, and you click that, and then you're able to go in here and start clicking on different parts of the page. Now you can see here that there's that class. You can see class container. So that's one of the containers that are in the web page that I'm modifying with my Octoprint. So you can see here container, and I set mine to 1400 px, which is pixels. So you can see here that class container is here, and then that class container is also here. Now, what you can do within here is you can see that the width for the container is already set at 940 px. Now my instance over here, I widened my container to 1400 px. Now you can customize this yourself to any value, and what's really neat about using Google Chrome for this is that we can modify this in real time. So if I go in here and I type 1600, you can see now that I've made this 1600 pixels wide. What we're going to do is modify this to be the same 1400. Now, modifying it here won't change anything permanently with Octoprint. Matter of fact, if I refresh this, you'll see that we lost all of those changes. But this is a good way for you to try out a setting and see how you like it before we put it into Octoprint. So we're going to change that to 1400. And then what we're going to do is within the Octoprint and Themify settings, we're going to create a new value. And we're going to call this that same dot container. And then it's going to ask us what CSS rule we're going to modify. This is what you can see right here is the rule or the property that we're going to modify. In this case, it's going to be width. And we know we're going to set that to 1400. There. Now we've made that adjustment and we can save it. And you can see here that this instance has already updated. So now when we refresh this, it will maintain that value. And you can see here that this 940px is now being overridden and is no longer the value that is being used for that container. Now I know that sounds a little complex, and this is very complex to do. However, with a little bit of trial and error and some time, you can go ahead and make these modifications. What I'm also going to do is include my settings here in a text file, and a link will be in the description. So you can go through here and make some of these changes or do some of the customizations yourself. And I also recommend reaching out to our Discord if you need help with this or you want to share a really cool setting that you've come up with while doing this. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and find span 8 within our HTML. Now, we can do this a couple of ways. We can go ahead and see if we can find it by going and drilling down into various parts of the HTML, and you can see that it exists right here. Another way to look for things is to go ahead and use this inspector button. And what you can do is you click there, and then when you navigate the page, it's going to bring you to exactly where it is in the web page code. Now, we know we're going to need to modify something near here to widen this image. So we're going to go ahead and click on that tab there, and then we're going to go ahead and look at what we hover over. And in this case, when we hover over the tab table or span 8, you can see that it highlights the entire region that we want to make wider. So this is how I modified this originally. I located the particular area I wanted to modify by hovering over this in the code, and Google Chrome highlighted to me where things needed to change. So my value here was 1080, and we can modify that over here. We're going to go back into Themify. And we're going to add a new one, span 8, width, and now you can see I've widened this image up so that way it fits within here. Now if this is too large and you don't want it that big, you just change that value within there so that way you can go ahead and make it whatever width you want. So if we want to change this a little bit, let's say we only want this to be about 800 pixels wide because maybe you don't have such a wide screen monitor. So when we go ahead and make that update and save it, you can see that this is now larger from the original, but still smaller. So when you're done with that and you're making that change and saved it, you can go ahead and refresh the page and confirm that it's been saved permanently. Okay, so let's do another example, and let's do one that we don't already have the answer for. So we have all these answers here, but let's make another change to this that we've got to start from scratch with. So let's say we want to change these button colors that are down here, and we don't want them to be this color here, but we want them to be, let's say, a darker color. So we're going to use our little inspector, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on that background of that button. And you can see here, it even tells you and shows you above what the colors are of everything. So we need to make sure that we're working with the actual button itself. And you can see here that there's a button with a ID, and then we also have a button box class. So let's say we want to try modifying the button class that's on here. So you can see here it's .btn. That would be the name that we need to use because it's btn here. So we're going to go into our Octoprint instance and we're going to try modifying that. So themify, and then we're going to do .btn, and then we're going to change this background color. So we're just going to copy that value and paste it from there. And then let's try changing this background color to, let's say, something like yellow. Now you can see we've already done that, and it's already changed all the background colors of the buttons. That white is really hard to read, so let's go ahead and change this to a darker color, like this burgundy. Now you can see we've now changed all of these button backgrounds by making that modification. Okay, so let's say we want to do something a little bit more surgical. As you can see here, we've now gone ahead and colored all of the backgrounds of our buttons this burgundy red. But let's say we want to do this individually. So we're going to go in here and we're going to click on our inspector, and let's address this print button. So when we click on this, you'll see it's got the same button class, but what it also has is an ID, and that ID is called job print. So I've just double clicked on that and I pressed Control C to copy the value. So let's try something a little more surgical. We're going to go into Themify, we're going to add a new value, and this time we're going to use that ID. So we need a number sign, a pound sign, and job print. That's the ID. And now what we're going to do is we're going to change its background color to something a little bit more like a print button. So let's say green. Now you can see when we save this, and you can see it over here to the left, we've now surgically colored that green button exactly what we want. Okay, so one of the other makeover items I want to talk about today are these quick actions. And these are super helpful for preheating or setting bed temperatures, changing filaments. I can come up with any number of different items that you could put down here that kind of give you quick one-touch selection of an action for your 3D printer. Now this is not enabled by default for Octoprint, so we're going to cover right now how to add these, and then we're going to talk about how we can use Themify to control this as well to skin these so they look exactly the way that you want. So we're going to go into our Octoprint instance, and we're going to go down to our plugin manager. And then we're going to search for the custom control editor. And this allows you to make the custom controls via the settings dialog. So we're going to install this one, and then we're going to have to restart Octoprint. Okay, so once we've reloaded Octoprint, we're going to go back into our settings, and now we're going to go to the custom control editor. Now, when I first installed this, I was very frustrated because I was not able to find good documentation that really explained how to use this. And if you look at it, it doesn't tell you anything. So through some trial and error, if you right click on this green area here, you can create a container. Now, what the container is this area right here. You tell it that this is going to be a container that you're going to put some things in. So as part of the container, what we're going to do is we'll just call this action commands. And then there's a couple of layout options. There's vertical, there's horizontal, there's a horizontal grid. So we're just going to go ahead and select horizontal. And then you have the option of making it collapse. Now what that means is you can have it look like this on startup. We're going to leave that unchecked because what we want to do here is leave this open every single time. So once we've created this, you can see here it's a little hard to read. You can see the action commands. Now what you've got to do now is, again, right click on this area here, and then you're going to create a command. So then you can create a script command or a regular command. Now the difference here from the command to the script command is that the script command allows you to execute multiple G codes. So if you want to do a few things like home your access and then perhaps do a warm-up sequence where it homes the printer and then goes ahead and warms up the printer, you can use that script command. We're going to just go ahead and enter a new command, and we're going to call this bed to 60. And then in the command section, this is where you need to set the M140 G code, and S60. And there's a confirmation that will allow you to go ahead and confirm that you really want to set the bed to 60. Little unnecessary, but there's also inputs on here. Now I've not used the output, but the inputs allow you to set the bed temperature to say any value that you want. We're not going to use either one of these. We're just going to go ahead and set it to 60. So now we've got a button that says set bed to 60, and we're going to save this. And now you can see here that down below that we have the bed set to 60. Now, mine is over here to the right where this one is down lower. And the way that I accomplished this was very much the same way that I've identified the different IDs or classes in here. So if we go to my Themify on my theme, you can see here that there's a control jog custom, and I tell it to float that instead of a static position. Now this is where you probably need a little bit more experience in CSS or HTML to make things like this work, but there's plenty of resources out on the internet to do that. So you can control things like the layout of a page by changing these values. So you can see here that I've copied over some of these values from the other instance of Octoprint that I have here. And you're welcome to do something very similar. What this really takes is a lot of knowledge of how to use CSS and HTML to make this work the way that you want. However, I've copied this here, so you're welcome to use this for your display panels. But if you know CSS and HTML, you'll find that you have a lot more possibilities in how to customize this. So we're going to save this, and you can see here now I've got my action commands off to the right. So with a little bit of tweaking, you can get this to look just the way that you want. And we can go in here and change these button colors. I used green in this example here. I used green, but you can change these to any color or leave them the default. Okay, so we've got our theme manager installed. We've learned how to do some customizations in Octoprint. Now where you take it is up to you. You can customize it further, and you can make any of the changes that you want into your custom Octoprint instance. Now, one thing I do recommend is once you've got this all set up, either back up your Octoprint or take some screenshots. So that way, if you ever lost your Octoprint instance, you don't have to redo this work. You already know how to do it. What I do on my Octoprint instances is I back them up and I do an import, and they automatically have all of these features. So each time I do a new Octoprint instance, it's got all these customizations. So it's a great way to approach keeping one set of settings and put it across multiple instances, or just a good backup in case you ever have to reload Octoprint. So with that, I'm going to say this is the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you do, make sure you mash that like button and leave some comments below on what your plans are for what you're going to be doing with Octoprint. And don't forget to subscribe and click that bell for instant notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. Well, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.